The shipping manifest described precision ball bearings, standard industrial components ordered by an aerospace parts distributor in Singapore. The bearings were listed as replacement parts for commercial aircraft manufacturing, routine procurement from a specialty manufacturer in Michigan. Except these bearings weren't destined for any aircraft factory. They were high-tolerance components engineered to withstand rotational speeds exceeding 70,000 revolutions per minute. The exact specifications required for gas centrifuge rotors used in uranium enrichment. The Singapore distributor was a shell company. Its corporate registration traced through 4 jurisdictions before disappearing into a maze of nominee shareholders and dormant holding companies. The real buyer was Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, and the Michigan manufacturer had no idea their precision engineering was being funneled to a clandestine nuclear weapons program 7,000 miles away. The FBI's Counterproliferation Center had been building this case for 19 months. They had identified a sprawling procurement apparatus spanning 3 continents. They had mapped 14 front companies operating from China, Singapore, Malaysia, and the United Arab Emirates. They had documented 847 individual shipments totaling $340 million in controlled technology transfers, and they had exactly 7 days before the network's most significant acquisition yet would leave American jurisdiction. Specialized vacuum chamber components. Equipment with no conceivable purpose other than uranium isotope separation. If those components reached Iran's enrichment facilities, Western intelligence assessments would require immediate revision. The Islamic Republic's path to weapons-grade uranium would shorten dramatically. This is how American counterintelligence unraveled a nuclear procurement network that had operated undetected for years, and how they stopped technology transfers that could have reshaped the nuclear balance of the entire Middle East. The thread that unraveled everything began with a single anomaly. In February 2022, an export compliance analyst at a precision instruments company in New Jersey noticed something strange. A longtime customer in Hong Kong had requested a change to their standard shipping arrangements. For 4 years, orders had been delivered to a verified industrial address in Kowloon. Suddenly, the customer wanted shipments routed through a freight consolidator in Dubai. Dubai raised immediate red flags. The city had become notorious as a transshipment hub for sanctions-evasion schemes. Goods entered the free trade zones, paperwork was shuffled, and controlled technology disappeared into opacity. The compliance analyst flagged the request. When senior staff examined the Hong Kong customer's documentation more carefully, inconsistencies emerged. The company's listed manufacturing facility didn't appear in satellite imagery. Phone numbers connected to answering services rather than actual offices. Corporate filings contained mathematical impossibilities in their financial statements. The company declined the order and submitted a voluntary disclosure to the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security. That disclosure triggered a cascade of investigative activity that would eventually expose one of the most sophisticated nuclear procurement operations ever detected on American soil. FBI counterintelligence agents traced the Hong Kong company through layers of corporate obscurity. Shell companies in the British Virgin Islands, holding entities in Labuan, trust arrangements in Liechtenstein. The beneficial ownership was deliberately hidden behind nominee directors spread across multiple jurisdictions. But financial forensics eventually penetrated the veil. Payment flows originated from accounts previously flagged in Treasury Department sanctions databases. The money traced back to entities with documented connections to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Hong Kong company wasn't a legitimate business. It was a procurement node operated by the IRGC's Self-Sufficiency Jihad organization, the division responsible for acquiring foreign technology for Iran's most sensitive military programs. The network's architecture was sophisticated beyond anything investigators had previously encountered. The IRGC had built an industrial-scale system for acquiring American technology while maintaining plausible deniability at every step. They identified American manufacturers producing equipment with potential nuclear applications, They created front companies in jurisdictions with limited transparency requirements. They developed elaborate cover stories explaining why civilian businesses would need specialized equipment. They placed orders that appeared completely legitimate. Individual purchases fell below export control thresholds. End-use certificates described plausible commercial applications. Payment came through banks with no obvious sanctions exposure. The American companies fulfilling these orders had no reason to suspect anything illegal was occurring. They were conducting normal international commerce with apparently legitimate customers. FBI investigation ultimately identified 14 front companies functioning as IRGC procurement channels. All had been established within a 5-year window. All had acquired technology with potential nuclear weapons applications. All utilized the same network of obscure financial institutions for payment processing. All routed shipments through the same constellation of freight forwarders in Dubai, Malaysia, and Turkey. The front companies had successfully extracted technology from 67 American manufacturers operating in 23 states. The procurement list read like a technical blueprint for uranium enrichment capability, marrying steel tubes with the precise dimensions required for centrifuge rotors. Frequency converters capable of controlling centrifuge cascade operations. Carbon fiber composite materials suitable for rotor construction. Flow-forming equipment used in manufacturing centrifuge components. Specialized lubricants designed for high-speed rotating machinery. Vacuum pumps engineered for isotope separation applications. Electronic controllers matching specifications for enrichment facility automation. Each item individually possessed legitimate civilian uses. Each individual export appeared perfectly legal when examined in isolation, but assembled together, these components formed the essential elements of a uranium enrichment program. The network had been operating for years. American technology had been flowing to Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure, while export control systems detected nothing. The procurement methodology reflected decades of Iranian experience evading international sanctions. They never attempted to acquire complete systems that would automatically trigger enhanced export scrutiny. Instead, they purchased individual components that fell beneath control thresholds. A single frequency converter wasn't controlled technology, but dozens of frequency converters combined with compatible motors, specialized bearings, and cascade control systems formed essential enrichment infrastructure. They established front companies with genuine appearing business operations. The companies maintained professional websites. They responded to technical inquiries with knowledgeable staff. They provided plausible explanations for their procurement needs. They cultivated relationships with American manufacturers over years before requesting sensitive items. They routed shipments through multiple transit countries using freight forwarders who specialized in asking no questions. They paid premium prices without negotiation, eliminating the commercial friction that might prompt closer examination. The system was nearly perfect. For years, it had operated beneath the detection threshold of American export controls. FBI investigation also identified American citizens who had knowingly participated in the network's operations. 12 individuals had consciously facilitated illegal technology transfers to Iran. Their motivations varied. Some were driven by greed. Some held ideological sympathies. Some had been compromised through blackmail or coercion. All had betrayed their country. 3 were executives at international trading companies who had been recruited directly by IRGC operatives. They received substantial payments to serve as intermediaries, providing false end-user certificates to American manufacturers and arranging logistics for controlled shipments. 4 were engineers and technical consultants who provided specialized expertise. They helped Iranian operatives identify which American manufacturers produced suitable equipment. They attended clandestine meetings in Istanbul and Dubai, where they briefed IRGC officers on American industrial capabilities and export control vulnerabilities. 3 were employees at freight forwarding companies who managed the physical movement of illegal shipments. They prepared customs documentation designed to conceal true destinations. They coordinated transit arrangements through intermediary countries. Two were financial professionals who facilitated payment processing. They helped Iranian money enter American banking systems while disguising its origin through layered transactions and shell company structures. Payments to these individuals ranged from $45,000 to $2.7 million. They had sold out their country's national security for money. The Iranian operatives managing the network operated from carefully chosen locations. FBI surveillance and signals intelligence identified 8 IRGC officers coordinating procurement activities from China, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey, countries where they could maintain communications with American contacts while remaining beyond the immediate reach of American law enforcement. These officers reported to senior leadership within the Self-Sufficiency Jihad organization at IRGC headquarters. Intelligence assessments concluded that technology acquired through this network had materially advanced Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities. Centrifuge reliability had improved, cascade efficiency had increased, production timelines had accelerated. American technology was actively enabling Iran's progress toward nuclear weapons capability. The investigation's urgency escalated dramatically in August 2024. FBI surveillance intercepted communications indicating that a critical acquisition was nearing completion. The network had successfully procured specialized vacuum chamber components from a manufacturer in Ohio, equipment specifically engineered for uranium isotope separation processes. Unlike previous acquisitions of dual-use items with plausible civilian applications, this equipment had no alternative purpose. Its specifications matched known requirements for Iranian enrichment operations. The equipment was destined for Iran's Fordo facility, a hardened underground complex buried beneath a mountain, specifically designed to withstand aerial bombardment. The manufacturer had been deceived by an elaborate cover story involving semiconductor manufacturing, but FBI technical specialists recognized the truth immediately. This equipment would dramatically enhance Iran's enrichment capacity if it reached its intended destination. The shipment was scheduled to depart Long Beach in exactly 7 days. Operation Atomic Shield received immediate authorization at the highest levels. The operation required simultaneous achievement of multiple critical objectives. The immediate shipment had to be intercepted before it left American jurisdiction. All 14 front companies had to be neutralized simultaneously through coordinated sanctions and asset freezes. The 12 American collaborators had to be arrested before they could flee, destroy evidence, or warn their handlers. The IRGC operatives overseas had to be isolated through financial disruption and communications interdiction. The operation demanded unprecedented coordination across multiple agencies. FBI provided investigative leadership. Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security handled export control enforcement. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control executed financial sanctions. Justice Department prosecutors prepared criminal charges. Defense Department technical experts analyzed seized equipment. Intelligence agencies provided signal support and international coordination. Everything had to happen within a compressed window. Any warning to any element of the network could compromise the entire operation. The equipment seizure came first. FBI agents and Customs and Border Protection officers intercepted the shipment at the port of Long Beach 3 days before its scheduled departure. The vacuum chamber components were impounded and transported under armed escort to a secure government facility. Defense Department specialists conducted immediate technical analysis. Their findings confirmed FBI suspicions. The equipment was purpose-built for uranium enrichment applications. Its configuration precisely matched intelligence on Iranian centrifuge cascade requirements. Installation at Fordo would have increased Iran's enrichment throughput by an estimated 35 to 40%. The Ohio manufacturer was genuinely shocked when FBI agents explained what had happened. Company executives had believed completely in the legitimacy of their customer. They had been professionally deceived by one of the most sophisticated procurement operations ever directed against American industry. The arrest phase commenced at precisely 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. FBI tactical teams executed coordinated warrants simultaneously across 8 states. All 12 American collaborators were in custody within a 90-second window before any could alert others or destroy evidence. In Houston, agents took down a trading company executive at his residence. His computer systems contained years of encrypted communications with IRGC handlers and detailed records of every shipment he had facilitated. In Los Angeles, a freight forwarding operations manager was detained at his office. His files documented the entire logistics chain that had moved American technology through Dubai and Kuala Lumpur to ultimate Iranian end users. In New York, a compliance officer at an international bank was arrested as he arrived for work. His records revealed how he had processed millions in Iranian payments while systematically concealing their true origin. In Chicago, an engineer was taken into custody at his apartment. His laptop contained technical specifications he had provided to IRGC procurement officers, identifying vulnerable American suppliers. By 8 a.m., all 12 targets were in federal custody. None had managed to warn their handlers or destroy incriminating evidence. The financial phase struck with equal precision. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control issued emergency sanctions designations against all 14 Chinese front companies simultaneously. Their American bank accounts were frozen. Their commercial relationships were severed. Their ability to conduct any dollar-denominated transactions was eliminated. The sanctions extended to 38 additional entities across China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, the UAE, and Turkey that had provided support services to the procurement network: freight forwarders, transshipment warehouses, financial intermediaries. The entire infrastructure was targeted. The front company network lost access to approximately $920 million in frozen assets and terminated contracts. Years of IRGC investment in building procurement capability was wiped out in a single morning. International cooperation extended the operation's impact across multiple jurisdictions. Law enforcement in the UAE raided freight forwarding facilities in Dubai's free trade zones. Malaysian authorities froze bank accounts and inspected warehouses. Singapore investigators executed search warrants at suspected front company offices. Turkish police detained individuals identified as network facilitators. The network's physical infrastructure across Asia and the Middle East was being systematically dismantled by coordinated international action. The prosecution of the American collaborators revealed the full depth of their betrayal. Evidence presented in court proceedings documented conscious participation in illegal technology transfers to a designated state sponsor of terrorism. Encrypted communications showed explicit discussions of Iranian end users. Financial records documented receipt of payments from sanctioned entities. Shipping documents proved knowledge that goods were being diverted to prohibited destinations. 10 defendants entered guilty pleas to charges including violations of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, export control violations, conspiracy, and money laundering. 2 defendants chose to contest the charges at trial. Both were convicted on all counts after juries deliberated for less than 4 hours. Sentences ranged from 7 years to 27 years in federal prison. The harshest penalties were imposed on those whose actions had most directly advanced Iran's nuclear weapons capabilities. The trading company executives who had knowingly facilitated shipments of controlled technology. The engineers who had provided technical expertise identifying exploitable suppliers. The equipment seized during Operation Atomic Shield underwent extensive technical analysis. Defense Department specialists documented exactly how the vacuum systems, centrifuge components, and control electronics would have integrated into Iranian enrichment operations. The detailed findings were classified at the highest levels, but the general conclusions were shared with congressional oversight committees. Had this technology reached Iran, the Islamic Republic would have possessed the capability to produce weapons-grade highly enriched uranium within 12 to 18 months. The seizure had disrupted that timeline by years. The operation had potentially prevented the emergence of a nuclear-armed Iran. The investigation exposed fundamental weaknesses in American export control architecture. The 67 American manufacturers who had unwittingly supplied the network had generally followed existing compliance procedures. They had verified customer credentials against available databases. They had reviewed export classification requirements. They had filed required documentation. They had still been completely deceived. The front companies had been too sophisticated, their cover stories too convincing, their patience too extensive. They had cultivated relationships over years, establishing trust before requesting sensitive items. Comprehensive reforms were implemented following the operation. Enhanced due diligence requirements for exports to customers in high-risk jurisdictions. Expanded information sharing mechanisms between government agencies and private sector exporters. New analytical tools to identify suspicious procurement patterns across multiple companies. Mandatory reporting requirements for certain categories of customer behavior changes. For the American manufacturers who had been deceived, the revelation was devastating. 67 companies learned that their products had been systematically diverted to Iran's nuclear program. Executives who believed they had been conducting legitimate international commerce discovered their technology was being used to develop weapons of mass destruction. Several companies faced civil penalties for technical export control violations despite having been victimized by sophisticated deception. The penalties were mitigated in recognition of their cooperation and absence of criminal intent. But the financial and reputational consequences were still severe. Companies that had inadvertently supplied nuclear weapons programs faced difficult questions from customers, shareholders, and government contracting officers. Some lost contracts with defense agencies that questioned their security protocols. Industry associations launched new initiatives to share threat information and best practices. The message resonated throughout American manufacturing. In an era of sophisticated state-sponsored procurement operations, good intentions and basic compliance procedures were insufficient protection. The diplomatic consequences unfolded immediately. The United States presented detailed evidence of the procurement network to allied governments. The documentation demonstrated that Iran had systematically evaded international sanctions with assistance from entities operating on Chinese territory. That American technology had materially advanced Iran's nuclear weapons capabilities. European allies strengthened export control coordination. Asian partners enhanced sanctions enforcement cooperation. The evidence galvanized international resolve to confront Iranian nuclear proliferation. China's role presented more complicated diplomatic challenges. The front companies had operated from Chinese territory for years. American officials expressed profound frustration at apparent Chinese non-cooperation with sanctions enforcement. The confrontation over China's role remained largely beneath public view, but the tensions were substantial. The 8 IRGC officers who had managed the network faced consequences they had not anticipated. Their financial resources were frozen. Their communication channels were compromised. Their carefully constructed network of American suppliers was destroyed overnight. Intelligence agencies exploited the disruption aggressively. With the network's communications architecture identified, signals intelligence collection expanded dramatically. Information gathered during Operation Atomic Shield provided unprecedented insights into broader IRGC procurement operations worldwide. Parallel networks operating in Europe, Asia, and South America were identified. Additional front companies were flagged for future enforcement action. The operation's intelligence value exceeded even its substantial operational success. Several of the IRGC officers were subsequently identified attempting to establish replacement procurement networks. Their identities were added to international sanctions lists. Their photographs were distributed to allied intelligence services worldwide. They would operate under surveillance for the remainder of their careers. The IRGC absorbed lessons from Operation Atomic Shield. Within months, intelligence indicated that new procurement networks were being established. Different front company structures, different transit routes, different financial channels, different cover stories. The fundamental strategy remained unchanged because it had worked for years despite this setback. The competition would continue indefinitely. Every network dismantled would eventually be rebuilt. Every procurement channel blocked would be rerouted. Every front company sanctioned would be replaced. The IRGC possessed institutional patience and substantial resources, but enforcement still mattered. Every shipment intercepted was technology that never reached Iranian weapons programs. Every network dismantled was years of procurement infrastructure wasted. Every arrest was a message that collaboration with Iranian nuclear programs carried severe consequences. Every operation delayed the timeline to Iranian nuclear weapons capability. The FBI agents and analysts who executed Operation Atomic Shield understood what they had accomplished and what remained at stake. They had prevented technology transfers that would have dramatically accelerated Iran's path to nuclear weapons. They had dismantled a procurement network that had operated successfully for years. They had potentially prevented a nuclear-armed Iran from emerging in the near term. A nuclear-armed Iran would fundamentally destabilize the Middle East. It would trigger cascading proliferation as regional rivals pursued their own nuclear deterrence. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt. The carefully maintained nuclear non-proliferation framework would collapse. The risks of nuclear terrorism would multiply. The dangers of regional nuclear conflict would become permanent features of international security. The consequences of failure were almost beyond calculation, and they had been exactly 7 days away from a technology transfer that could have made those consequences inevitable. Iran's nuclear program continues today. The Islamic Republic maintains substantial uranium enrichment capabilities. It continues developing advanced centrifuge technology. It continues seeking foreign technology that could accelerate its progress toward weapons-grade material. The procurement networks have been partially rebuilt. New front companies have emerged. New cover stories have been developed. New American manufacturers are being targeted. The threat has not been eliminated. It has been delayed, complicated, made more difficult and more expensive. That matters more than most people understand. Every month of delay is another month for diplomatic solutions to emerge. Every obstacle in the procurement chain is another opportunity for detection. Every year without a nuclear-armed Iran is another year the world avoids the most dangerous proliferation scenario imaginable. The FBI's counter-proliferation mission continues without pause because somewhere right now an IRGC procurement officer is placing an order with an American manufacturer. The front company appears legitimate. The cover story is convincing. The end-user certificate describes plausible civilian applications. And somewhere, an FBI analyst is reviewing that transaction, looking for patterns, asking questions, searching for the anomaly that will unravel the next network. That's where the next investigation begins. That's how the next nuclear threat will be prevented. That's what happens every day, whether the world ever knows it or not.